Welcome to another episode of Friends of Bhutan, a series that features remarkable individuals from across the world who have been drawn to Bhutan by a deeper connection to our country. Today I'm delighted to speak with someone whose work touches the hearts and minds of many in our society. Mental health is a growing concern in Bhutan, heartbreakingly among our youth, and it is an issue that has drawn the compassionate attention of Her Majesty the Gelson. Addressing this challenge requires dedication, empathy, and a deep understanding of the human spirit. Our guest today, I feel, embodies all these qualities. Carly Clutterbuck, a psychologist with 20 plus years of experience in her field, first came to Bhutan 6 years ago as an Australian volunteer. Carly has also served as a trainer for mental health for the Desung Skilling Program, and most recently, she serves as the mental health consultant at the Pema Secretariat, where we are today, an organization at the forefront of mental health advocacy and support in Bhutan. Carly's journey is not just about her professional expertise, but also about her heartfelt connection to Bhutan and Buddhism. In this episode, we'll learn about her inspiring work and the hope she brings to those struggling with mental health issues. I'm going to start with the most obvious question, one you've probably heard 100 times since you've been here. But Carly, tell me, as someone from Australia, what drew you to Bhutan? Which is an interesting question when so many of us have now gone to Australia.
Yes.
What drew you to our country? Please tell us.
So I like to travel. Traveling is one of my favorite things to do. It broadens your perspective, it gives you new experiences. And Bhutan was the last Buddhist country I hadn't traveled to. So I've travelled all across this region, mainly to the red robes, the yellow robes. I haven't done a lot of those countries. I feel a bit more of an affinity to the Mahayana Vajrayana side of Buddhism. And this was the last country I hadn't been to. So I saw a job advertised with the Australian Volunteers Program. I was like, hey, go spend a year in Bhutan. I'm like, why not? Why not? And I applied and was astounded that I actually got the role. And then I thought, oh, this is actually happening. I'm actually moving here. And I thought to myself, well, if I hate it, I can just move home. And I clearly forgot to move home.
Well, Bhutan has been like your second home now, right? 6 years. You first came in 2019?
I did.
Just 1 year before the pandemic.
Yes, I did have to leave for the pandemic.
So you didn't experience lockdown here?
No, I had to experience lockdown in Australia, which was vastly different because I lived a block from the beach. So I know, we could just go for a walk, get some ice cream. Vastly different to the experience I read about here.
Yes. Carly, you have a lot of Bhutanese friends, and I'm sure you've heard this, but do you think that there's a karmic connection with Bhutan?
I'm not sure, but probably. So this feels very comfortable and safe. I feel like I've been here before, but I feel that about parts of Nepal and some bits of Tibet that I've been in. So I don't know, maybe it's just something about the Himalayas that despite my current iteration of colouring, maybe I've been here before.
I'm interested because you're someone who is passionate about mental health, but you also have a very strong affinity and I think a calling to Buddhism. Mm-hmm. Where do you think they intersect?
Oh, I think there's a lot in common, actually, that a lot of our inner well-being can be addressed and looked at from a lot of different perspectives, and spirituality is one of them. I don't necessarily just mean Buddhism, I mean any kind of spiritual belief. I actually studied as a Buddhist psychotherapist, where we looked at the intersection of how the West understands psychotherapy and how some Buddhist understandings and doctrines and interventions can support psychotherapeutic practice. That was fascinating and something that I use a little bit here, not so much, a little bit, but not quite as much, depending on whether the person I'm seeing actually is Buddhist. Because just because you're born in a Buddhist country doesn't mean you actually are Buddhist. Because I was born in a Catholic country and I ain't Catholic.
Oh, that's really interesting. So I know that your degree was years and years,
yes,
but in a sentence, can you give us the essence of what Buddhist psychotherapy?
Yeah, Buddhist psychotherapy is understanding how the use of traditional Buddhist principles can support psychological well-being. So, for example, the idea of impermanence. So impermanence in Buddhism is that, whatever lives will die. Whatever arises will also pass. And if you think about that emotionally, if I'm experiencing stress, it will arise, it will peak, and it will pass. The dreams that I have will arise, they will be there, and then they will pass. This moment, right here, will be here, it will arise, it will pass. So how can I use that understanding to create some space between what I feel, even what I think, and understand that this too shall pass, because it's impermanent.
It makes a lot of sense as well. In fact, you don't quote me, I could be wrong, but I read somewhere that they were like, Buddha was the first...
first psychologist.
Right, and he, all the things he talked about 2,500 years ago, you can still find in self-help books from 2025.
Absolutely, and the concept of mindfulness.
Correct.
Yeah, all of those things, he started it. And it is kind of amusing to me that the West is like, oh my God, we've totally found this excellent thing. And I'm like, no, you didn't. We just applied it a slightly different way.
A lot of our viewers may not know, because even I didn't know before, but there is a difference between a psychiatrist and a psychologist, who you are.
Yes.
And I know also that the field of psychology is so vast. There's so many broad, right? And so where are your expertise? I mean, there's different ages, there's child psychologists, so can you tell us, what are your specialty?
So the main difference between a psychologist and a psychiatrist is a medical degree.
I see.
So I haven't done a medical degree. I'm not going to be doing a medical degree. So psychiatrists can prescribe medication. I cannot. Psychologists tend to focus on understanding patterns of behaviour. So psychology is the study of the mind, basically. And so we focus on using therapeutic tools like cognitive behaviour therapy, dialectical behaviour therapy, interpersonal therapy, motivational interviewing to intervene on patterns of behaviour. Because you weren't born pre-patterned. You learn these patterns through your experiences in childhood, especially, and what patterns are encouraged and rewarded, what patterns are punished, and that teaches us different ways of coping. And that coping is usually, when we're children, is to survive this environment. And if I have a lovely, warm, caring, wonderful environment, no problem. But if my environment is overly harsh, if there's violence involved, if I get negative feedback for just being myself, then I develop coping patterns. And eventually they stop working. They stop being effective. So what we do is we have a look at these patterns, and we have a look at sometimes where they come from, but you don't have to do that actually. And then we have a look at different skills and different ways that we can interact with people and with our environment, but most importantly with ourselves, different ways that we can treat ourselves. So you're right, psychology is very broad, very vast. You can be a forensic psychologist working in a prison. You can be an organizational psychologist working in a workplace. You can be a child and adolescent psychologist. You can be in a geriatric, so working with older people. I work with people 12 and above. I did quite a lot of work in early psychosis with 12 to 24-year-olds. I love working with 12 to 24-year-olds. They're probably my favorite. So I would say that's definitely one of my specialty areas. Anything under 12, I'm not sure, to be honest. So 12 and up. And I've worked in a broad range of places. So I've worked with addiction, and I've worked with severe mental illness. I've worked with personality disorders and trauma and attachment and depression, anxiety, stress, those kinds of things. So I would say that I'm a generalist psychologist. So I haven't really specialised because I think people are so different and so unique that if you only focus on one thing, that tends to be all you see. And I want to do all of it.
Okay, so Carly, 2019, you were an Australian volunteer with the Ministry of Health.
Yes.
You came back in 2022. You worked a lot with the DESUPs for the mental health training, right? Can you give us a little insight about what that was like for you? Because it's different, same field, but different sort of institutions.
Oh, so much fun. I had a great time. So somebody rang me. Who rang me? I think it was Sungay from FMPH rang me and said, so do you want to come back to Bhutan and do some training? And I'm like, I can be there on Tuesday. And they wanted to do an introduction to mental health, but they also wanted to do a diploma program through the Faculty of Nursing and Public Health to train the first community mental health outreach workers in the country. So I arrived in 2022. I had a couple of months to do some writing and some consultation and to try and understand the lay of the land and how it had changed since 2019. And we did 2 introduction to mental health courses. They went for about a month each. And there were 25, 26, so there were maybe 50 people, 50 DESUP that we trained in that. And then from those 50, we took the top 20 and 25 and invited them to attend the Community Mental Health Outreach Worker course through FMPH, which was a 6-month certified course.
So just for our viewers who might not know what FNPH is.
Sorry, Faculty of Nursing. You guys do a lot of acronyms here, and now I'm very familiar with them. That's what I talk about.
I'm still trying to get used to the new acronyms.
There's a lot of them. Yeah. So it's the Faculty of Nursing and Public Health through the KGUMs.
Okay.
They train your nurses, your clinical counsellors, your health assistants, and now we're hoping they will also train some outreach workers.
Oh, that's wonderful. And these 10 or 15 DESUPs that had the training all the way, what are they doing now?
Yeah, there's 17 of them out in the community. So the idea was that clinical counselling services, SUD services, substance use disorder services, addiction services sit up in the hospitals, and there's a big gap between the community and the hospital. So an outreach worker is embedded in the community, working with NGOs, doing health promotion and prevention, figuring out if there's anybody that needs support and facilitating them to come to access services. So rather than waiting for people to maybe have a breakdown or be very distressed and needing to go to the hospital. So when you think about physical illness, people don't go to the hospital until they're super sick. With mental health, that tends to be what happens here too. But if we can get it before you're super sick, it's much easier to recover and go on to live an absolutely normal life. So if we can get people in sooner, we have a much better prognosis.
Oh, that's fantastic. And how does this now tie into what you're doing at the Pema Secretariat? How did that happen? Because I'm so grateful. We're so grateful that you're here, and it's serendipitous. I think everything has sort of, the stars have aligned, or rather the planets have aligned, since everyone's talking about planets aligning. So how did that happen, and how does that tie up? Is there a connection with the Pema and the Desung Skilling program perhaps? I feel that there's a lot of intersections there as well.
So I finished working for the DESUP in 2023 at the very end. Our DESUP graduated in January last year. They were put on OJT. So I still had 6 months where I could be here, and at that point in time, the Faculty of Nursing and Public Health needed a lecturer for a few subjects. I've been lecturing here. They know me, they know what I can do, and they were gracious enough to let me stay and lecture for 6 months or so, or for the second semester. And then while that was happening, I ended up having a day free, if that's what you do. And I rang my friend Dill, who I worked with at the Ministry of Health in 2019. He was in the mental health program then. And I'm like, Dill, do you need a hand with anything? Need to do anything? He's like, oh, yes, please. And so then I came here for like a day a week and started on a few different projects. And from that, we realized how much there was that needed to happen, and how we have the human resource here for mental health is small. For now. We're going to get better at that. The next 5 years, we're doing a lot of capacity building, which is very exciting. And so part of that capacity building was me coming back in a consultant role.
2019 till now is 6 years, and I think for us, so much of it has been our upbringing, things that we're conditioned with. So you come with fresh perspective as well, and someone who's professionally trained to look at it from a professional angle. So what are your thoughts on mental health in Bhutan, and how much of it do you think is conditioned by culture, our upbringing, our belief system? So I'm just curious, because at the end of the day, of course, we're all human beings. You would know better. I think each country, each place that you've practiced in would have different sort of flavorings.
Absolutely, and you're absolutely right. Your culture, your society, the messages that you're told, what is socially acceptable, what is not socially acceptable, all of that shapes our mental health, regardless of where you are. It's the same in Australia. I did a little bit of work in Nepal. It's the same in Nepal. It's the same in Cambodia. Like, how you're taught is to be in a society very much shapes your experience, not only of yourself, of your family, but of your community. So yes, all of those things contribute to our mental health. Far more people are more engaged, they're more curious, they want to learn more, they want to understand a bit better. And as horrible as COVID was, I think COVID had a lot to do with that.
Yes, I agree.
Everybody was in the same boat.
Correct.
Everybody experienced what it was like to struggle with their mental health.
Correct. I think that's a good sign, especially because a lot of young people, I can't imagine what it's like being a teenager, being a young person. I mean, in my 20s with social media, with TikTok, I can't imagine. I mean, I guess we're both in the same generation, but teenagers are tough to begin with, and with all this pressure, and now the whole world is in your
hand, in your pocket, yes. And everybody's opinions, regardless of whether they're correct or not. So if there's one thing I can say is, please don't diagnose yourself over social media. A lot of the social media I have seen around ADHD, ASD, PTSD is fundamentally incorrect, and to overly, what we would say, pathologize. So what that means is to think that I have something catastrophically wrong with me that I will never get over is completely inaccurate when it comes to mental health. Plenty of people come in with mental health struggles through therapy, through treatment. Most people recover. The vast majority of people recover. You don't have to live with this forever. That's kind of the whole point of like psychology and counselling and psychiatry. That's the point, is that if we didn't think it worked, we wouldn't do our jobs. But I'm here to tell you that it is very possible, extremely possible.
And isn't that ironic? Because on the one hand, yay for people being aware, yes. Yay for mental health being
a conversation.
Exactly. Mm-hmm. I think men suffer from reaching out, from opening up, because there's a lot of stigma attached to being a man. You can't express your emotions because that's not what men do, and women can cry because they're women. And I hate to say this, but although we are a matriarchal society, I think those sort of stereotyped gender sort of how do you say? It still exists even in 2025. Yeah. I'm curious, the clients that you see. Please tell me, I hope there are more men coming as well.
Majority are women, yes. A couple of men, but the majority are female. And that's actually a problem the world over. That's not just in Bhutan. So men are almost twice as likely to die by suicide. They are higher for drug and alcohol problems. They are less likely to seek help, even for physical problems, let alone mental health problems. So normalising conversations around how are you?
Right.
And I also notice here, when you ask somebody how they are, they say fine la. So I ask again, even if they're coming to counselling, fine la. I say, well, you're coming to counselling. You're probably not fine. And so I ask again, how are you really? Mm-hmm. And they go, actually, I'm not doing so well. Also normalising asking again, and not feeling like you need to say I'm fine when you're not fine. Mm-hmm. It's okay not to be fine. Mm-hmm. I have days when I'm not fine. I teach this all day, every day, and I still have days when I'm not fine. Mm-hmm. And that's okay. That's just part of being human.
I can imagine that when you get clients, they come to you, and I think it's not fair to the psychologist or the therapist. People often come with the expectation that you can fix them. I'm sure there are days when it takes energy out of you as well. So how do you cope? Do you have a psychologist that you can talk to as well?
So part of being a psychologist is it's a requirement by Australian standards that we are required to access clinical supervision. So clinical supervision is with somebody more senior to you, where you can take cases, where you can talk about your own well-being, where they can help sort of reflect back. And I've been lucky enough to be working with my psychologist, clinical supervisor, for quite a while now. He used to be a monk. Cool, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, he used to be a monk, so he has a really nice Buddhist bent as well, which is a really nice fit for what I'm currently doing. So yes, we access clinical supervision. It's a requirement.
That's great. Nice to know you're taking care of yourself.
Of course, I can't take care of others if I don't take care of me.
Yes, yes. On that note, the Pema Secretariat, we have a toll-free number that the Pema has in place. Could you tell our viewers a bit more about that?
So there are two numbers actually. So 1010, which will put you through to the police service, and if you say I'm seeking mental health support, they will refer you to our hotline, or 1098 if you're concerned about violence, or you're concerned about a child in difficult circumstances. So a child that might be suffering neglect or violence within the home, you can call 1098 and that will put you through directly to us as well. Both of those are 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Service is to help you in the moment, to manage whatever is happening for you, and they will generally suggest that you go and seek further support. So you seek counselling through a clinical counsellor. If you are in a region that has a clinical counsellor in the hospital, that's one option. We have 2 clinical counsellors here that sit out of the Pema. So you can come in here in this lovely room and have a chat to a trained professional about what's happening for you. And if you can't make it in, or you're a bit shy to come in and it's kind of a bit much, they offer services over the phone. We do video counselling. I do video counselling all the time. All the time, because the distance is here, right?
Yes, correct.
Yeah, so I've had clients in Funzling, I've had clients out in the east, because video, always accessible. So there are a number of ways that you can access therapeutic services. You don't have to come in if you're not comfortable.
I know you know this, but how lucky are we? Because mental health services elsewhere is frightfully expensive.
Oh, yes. Very expensive.
And over here, we, with the blessings of their majesties, especially Her Majesty the Gelson, who's very passionate about mental health. Yes. All these services are for free.
Free, yes.
And we're so blessed, actually. We really need to make use of these services. Yeah, that was my next question, because see, we're in Thimphu and oftentimes we just concentrate on urban areas.
Yes.
But I'm curious, are we more stressed out, and do we have more mental health, do you feel, in these urban areas? But now you mentioned that you have some clients, people calling from the east, or what's the... where are we in terms of mental health issues in remote areas? Do we have that data right now?
Not that I have access to. We probably do, but I haven't looked at it recently. I would say that there's probably more awareness, but also like in Funzling and Gellifu, I think the mental health awareness is a bit more pervasive in the community, and I would say the more remote we get, the less likely we are to understand really what's happening. And basic things like stress is misunderstood, that actually you're just experiencing stress. That's okay. All of our bodies get stressed. And that is not... The other issue that I think is Bhutan-wide is the use of the term mental health to describe everything. So, I have mental health. Darling, everybody has mental health. It's just whether your mental health is good and you are thriving and excelling, or whether you're struggling with your mental health, or whether you have a mental health disorder.
Right.
So all of those things are different. Everybody has mental health, just like everybody has physical health. So it's not just that this person they struggling with their mental health. Absolutely, yeah. Or maybe they have a mental health disorder. But everybody is on the spectrum somewhere with mental health.
Correct. Quick question. What are, if possible to share, what are the top, should we say top 5? Are there that many? What are the top 5 common mental health issues in your experience dealing with?
This one I know. Okay, so anxiety, followed by substance use disorder, depression, and I'm not sure about the other 2. I only remember the top 3 for some reason. Yeah, so anxiety, depression, substance use disorder. We know what works for them. We know what the evidence base is for them. They are very treatable. Please get help. In my experience, I see a lot of attachment disorder. So I see a lot of people who struggle to have healthy relationships with other people, usually from their past experiences. So yeah, I see a lot of that.
Could you give me an example of an attachment disorder?
So the disorder part comes in, and this is for anything, so everybody has anxiety. A little bit of anxiety before coming in here today, I'll be honest. But an anxiety disorder means that I would have avoided this altogether. I could not perform what is generally expected of me because of my level of anxiety. So that's the difference between having proper, normal, everybody has anxiety, and an anxiety disorder. So a difference between attachment is everybody has an attachment style. Everybody, myself included. An attachment disorder means that it can start to get in the way of you being able to live your life. So it affects mainly your relationships, which is a problem at work. It becomes a problem in your romantic relationships, in your family. So everybody has attachment patterns. Most people are somewhere here, so they're not necessarily attachment disorder, they have disordered attachment. Yes, there's a difference. I know psychology is, and English is weird. So disordered attachment just means that I can still function, but I am a bit more distressed than if I was fine in my attachment.
I find it very interesting because we're such a close-knit society. Yes. And our divorce rates are also getting higher. Yes. There's also a misconception that the minute you have a mental health disorder, you immediately need to be medicated.
Yes.
But that's not true, is it?
No.
Yeah.
So there are some psychological disorders that require medication. So some of the psychotic disorders, bipolar affective disorder, require medication in order for us to get you stable enough to then do some kinds of intervention. But again, it's about severity. So if you have had a major depressive disorder for 12 months where you've been completely unable to function, medication is probably indicated. If you have a mild depressive disorder, you could engage in therapy and figure it out that way to come to a level of kind of energy and motivation where you can engage with therapy, but it's not a necessary step.
This is the part of the interview which is hard to talk about because, most of us have had somebody who's lost a dear one to suicide. And this is something that we have to talk about because it's happening in Bhutan as well. I know that it's easy to Google and all, but it's always nice to talk to someone who actually, a professional. What are some of the signs that we can look for? Because I think all of us have this intuition that someone
is not okay.
Right, but because we all have our own, we're all on the spectrum of things, we hesitate. And this is another irony, I feel, because close-knit society, we usually know what everyone's doing. But in 2025, even to see our family members, you need to schedule.
Right.
Which was unheard of during my parents' generation. You just
go.
Right? Neighbors know each other. But now we live in apartment buildings. We don't even know who our neighbor is. And this is the state of things now. So we don't reach out as much as we would like to. But what are some of the signs, Carly, that we can look out for, especially for young people?
One of the main indicators that somebody is thinking about taking their life is that they're talking about it. So they're saying, it'd be better if I wasn't here. Nobody would miss me when I was gone. What's the point in keeping on going? It's hopeless, it's useless. The future sucks, I suck, everybody sucks. I don't want to be here anymore. It would be easier if I just didn't wake up. So sometimes it's direct. It would be better if I was dead. Sometimes it's that vague, if I just didn't wake up, life would be so much easier. So talking about it is one of the main indicators. And unfortunately, when people hear people talking about it, they tend to dismiss or minimize it and say, don't talk like that. There's nothing wrong with you. Look, you've got a house, you're comfortable, you've got a job. What could you possibly have to be sad about? So out of usually fear and panic, they sort of dismiss and minimize that, which means the person learns to not talk about it. And that's the worst thing that we could do. We need to be talking about it. Some of the other indicators are social isolation. So if they are usually relatively social and you invite them out and they're like, oh yeah, okay, no problem. And then they're like, oh no, I can't this week. And you're like, okay, cool. And then you invite them out next week and they're like, oh, there's a lot going on, work at the moment, and no, I can't come this week. And then you invite them next week and they're still saying no. So all of this is things that are uncharacteristic. So if your friend is like a screaming introvert and needs to go home to be contained, okay. But if they're normally quite social and you can get them to interact and they're avoiding all of that, that can be an indicator. That's an indicator of a lot of psychological disorder, actually. And it's not the one-off, I just can't do it this week. How about we catch up next week and then we turn up next week and everything's fine. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about a pattern of avoidance. If you notice their sleep is being interrupted or their appetite. Also, if they're having mood swings. Now, I'm not talking about what you see online mood swings. I'm talking about if they're kind of okay and then they might be a bit distant and get a bit teary. Or something quite small happens and they look like they overreact. So if I knocked over this water bottle and burst into tears and like, I can't do this anymore, that would be an indicator. If I knocked over the water bottle and got angry, so you'd be looking at that going, it's just a water bottle. But to me, I'm very distressed by that. So that's kind of what I mean by a mood swing. They're more irritable or they're more teary than normal. Or if they're using more drugs and alcohol to cope. Yeah, so if I used to just drink on weekends, kind of socially, and now I'm starting to drink on Tuesdays and Wednesdays. Or I used to have like 3 or 4 and that was fine, and now I'm getting like blackout drunk, like 6 and 7 and 8. And so I'm relying more on substances to modulate my mood.
Yeah, it's a very terrible loop, isn't it? The negative loop. So let's say someone has noticed these symptoms. Can they call the Pema Secretariat?
Absolutely. We can't intervene on somebody else's behalf necessarily, but if you're worried about someone and you don't know what to do, please call us. We can help with that. The other thing is to know what to do, because that's what usually stops us from asking, is I'm terrified they say yes. The other thing about asking about suicide is it doesn't make somebody suicide. So this is another myth that is rattling around, is if I say, have you thought about taking your life? That person is going to suddenly go, no, I hadn't actually, I'm going to go take my life. That does not happen. I ask my clients routinely whether they've thought about taking their life. And if it made them take their life, I would have no more clients. So it actually demonstrates that you're a safe person, that you're okay to talk to, that you're not anxious about the answer of that, and it encourages someone to talk. And if they talk, we can get them help. If they don't talk, we can't get them help. So simply asking, you've been a bit out of sorts lately, like you haven't been yourself. I've noticed I've asked you to come out a couple of times and you haven't been able to. Are you doing okay? And then you get the I'm fine la. I'm like, how have you actually been? I'm actually really worried about you. And no one likes to, most people like to hear that somebody's worried about them.
That's true. Even if you're an avoidant.
Yes. Even if you aren't comfortable talking about what's happening for you, if somebody says, I'm actually really worried about you, genuinely, are you okay? And if they say, they probably won't come straight out with, I've been thinking about killing myself. They might be saying, there's a lot going on at work, I'm not sleeping, feel horrible all the time.
But Carly, I have another question. What if someone that you really care about just shuts you out and you've tried everything? What do you do then?
I say, okay, it sounds like you're not in a place where you're ready. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to check in a week and see how you are. And then you got to do it. So a little trick is to put it in your calendar on your phone. You're like, check in with. Say, hey, how you doing? What's going on?
Because the thing about this is that even the person who's really worried about her friend or his friend, even their mental health gets affected, doesn't it? Because it's like, again, it's this back to this shared energy, close-knit society, you're worried. But these are very insightful, and I really hope that our viewers will take away a lot from this. Carly, I want to talk more about your time in Bhutan. So where have you traveled? Is there a place that you really want to go?
I don't know. I like the ability to kind of go with the flow here. And I like that, I know you said before that you have to plan in advance to see people. I find it's the opposite for me. I just kind of go, anyway, so Saturday, let's do this. I'm like, okay, which I find quite refreshing. So I haven't done a lot of planning I've done a fair bit of travel. I've gone out to the east. I haven't gone far east. I would like to do that. I like to go northeast. I kind of like to go kind of up there a little bit. Finding the time to do that is a bit of a challenge, but yeah, it will happen. I don't know, I'm not too fussed on it. I understand that someone one day will say, hey, I'm going to Trash Yangtze, you want to come? And I'm like, yeah, that's how it's going to work for me, I think. But my plans are mostly like professional, to be honest. All the things I want to help the PEMA achieve here, and the things I want to see that I so know can happen. I'm so inspired by your young people in particular, who will be the future leaders of this country, and how passionate and excited and interested they are. And I think they're the biggest asset, and we need to get in now and help them become our future leaders. And that's the kind of stuff I'm really excited about.
And I think who better than it's so nice that you're here, because you're a mentor as well for these young people, especially the Desups that trained with you. Because I think, and this is not just because you're here, I'm saying all these nice things, because another thing that I'd like to share with our viewers is I met you in 2019. Carly is someone that is so easy, you're so easy to talk to. And I think the main thing is because so many of us, mental health awareness rather is a new thing. And you know what? Thank you to the pandemic as well. Thank you to the lockdowns for breaking some stigmas, you know. And I think that's always a positive. And it's not as, even a 8-year-old child now knows about mental health awareness, which is a good sign. And how lucky are we to have you as well? Someone who, who treats it, I think I know I'm not the only one. You approach it with so much warmth and friendship. Doesn't become like this clinical white lab, with a pen and paper with your glasses, and you don't judge, which is so nice. So I know that I'm not alone. I think everyone that you've met, it's a resounding same thing. It's like, oh yeah, we know Carly, and she's so easy to talk to, and I think that's the first step.
Yes.
So
talking is definitely the first step.
Is there anything else happening at the Pema Secretariat that you can share with us that you're excited about?
So many things are happening. Oh my gosh, this team is such a hard-working team, and they're also really passionate. I think we have the right mix of people in the right place at the right time.
What advice would you give others who want to contribute to mental health awareness in Bhutan? What would you like to say to them? Because I know that there are many.
So many. It's wonderful. I love that. Be open to having conversations. And I would say this to everybody. Be open to having conversations about mental health. Be open to, and this is going to sound difficult, to be struggling with your mental health. Be open to accepting help from others. But in order for that to happen, we need to demonstrate that we are safe spaces. And how we do that is by being warm, by being engaged, and most importantly, be non-judgmental. So resist the urge to shut that person down. Because what I hear is people say, I'm struggling with this, I don't know what to do with that. And I get, be strong. Be strong. You'll be fine. You have everything that you need. What could you possibly be sad about? So out of probably a desire to make you feel better, I say these things that are actually really hurtful. And I think people underestimate how hurtful it is to have something deep that you shared with someone basically dismissed. Also, if people could just be strong, I wouldn't have a job. If it was that simple, we would not need any of these services. It's not that simple. Have you noticed nobody ever tells them how to be strong? They just say be strong. So we can encourage these conversations by leaning in. When somebody says, I'm really struggling, all you have to say is, tell me about that. What's been happening for you? That's it. You don't have to fix it. You are not a mental health professional. you are a friend. And if you don't know what to do, say that. I actually don't know how to help you with, I'm not sure what to do. How do you feel about calling the Pema Secretariat? How do you feel about going to a counsellor? I'm happy to go with you. How do you feel about accessing a service, basically? Be willing to go with them. You can call the Pema Secretariat right there and then, and you can speak to the person and have that person listen to what you're talking about. So we need to normalise these conversations. So normalise conversations about this, not to self-diagnose, not to pathologise, but just to share experience. Because that's all it is sharing experience.
I think that's a wonderful note to end this episode. But before we leave, I wanted to ask you, what's your favorite quote on just the human condition, on mental health?
All sentient beings are seeking happiness. That's it. So all we're trying to do is do the things that make us happy, and we all struggle with that. We need to be able to support ourselves, because we are sentient beings too, to experience that happiness, whatever that looks like for us.
Thank you, Carly. I hope that you continue to explore Bhutan and that you're here, in your words, forever. That would be so nice. And yes, and thank you for all that you do and for all the lives that you touch and improve just by offering your services. And again, I'd like to remind whomever this episode might have touched or inspired, the Pema Secretariat has the toll-free numbers that you can call. It's never too late or too early to take the first step towards mental health awareness. And like Carly said, we're all sentient beings. We all want happiness at the end of the day, but it's not something that can't be cured, right? Like any other, can't be achieved. So on that note, thank you very much. Thank you, Cutting Chella again. And we'll see you soon. Thank you.